The Columbia Broadcasting System and its affiliate stations coast to coast present
Baseball, Beer, and Barbecue.
No hitter for Arietta.
Discussing baseball, good drinks, and food.
Or clear for a minute so I can write down the damn time.
It just got weird.
With Ted Hicks.
Everybody wants to be Bartolo.
Todd Vandenberg.
The handsomest man on the entire goddamn tour.
And Lee Vowell.
Folks, look around. Anyone who's not singing in the choruses is a racist.
Every Saturday morning at 10 a.m. on the Happy Hour Network.
And welcome to Baseball Beer and Barbecue with Lee and Todd, and not Ted, this week. You can like us on the Facebook. You can follow us on the Twitter at Baseball Beer BBQ or at the Unreal Todd, I guess, and at Lee Vowell, and that's with 2 L's. Or as I said to someone while I was doing my day job, who actually worked for another company, I said, "Oh, what's your last name?" And I said, "It's the opposite of consonant with 2 L's, so it's Vowell." "Oh, Vowell." Yes, because that's exactly how people should say the opposite of consonant. Vowell.
Vowell.
Not vowel, but Vowell.
Vowell.
Anyway.
How are you, Mr. Vowell? That sounds very not Irish.
That's Celtic. So, we are recording this podcast because good chances that Todd will not make it out alive from South Florida this week. So this is probably Todd's last show, so big send-off for Todd.
Quite true. Hurricane Zika. God, that would be awesome. They really need, hopefully there's not a Hurricane Zika, because that would be bad if we actually have that many hurricanes. But wouldn't that be cool, Hurricane Zika? It would be like Sharknado, but with like really small bitey things instead of big bitey things.
It would be...
Oh my God, Sci-Fi, Sci-Fi tweeted it, so it's gone. Should have copyrighted it.
It would be, it's one of those things where it would be good or bad. So,
mostly bad. Mostly bad.
Well, I don't want to go that far. So anyway, we will be talking in just a few minutes with Big Mike of the Orange Report, talking Texas football. It seems like every year about this time we always have Mike on the show. He's always fantastic. He's smarter than I am, and I don't know about Todd, but he's an educator, not Todd, but Mike is an educator in the John Houston area of the United States. So you can also hear this show supposedly on NGSE Sports, I-95 Sports Network, Back Sports Page, RF Sports, I don't know if that's true, XRP Radio, iHeartRadio, iTunes, Arena Sports Network, and Todd, who else do we have to thank this evening and this morning and whatever, whenever you're listening to this show, and hopefully your family is safe and secure.
There should be an adrenal gland radio. I mean, that's pretty important, too. I mean, iHeartRadio gets all the plug, like the heart's the only thing that matters. It makes me kind of sad. Anyway, CJ Computers. They're good people. You can find them on the Twitter.
What about Cappies?
I'm saving the hot stuff for later.
All right.
At CJ Computers NC, 919-653-8496. They can repair anything in the world except your taste buds. When you destroy them, you won't destroy them, but your taste buds will be very happy when you have Cappy's Original Wicked Hot Sauce. That's C-A-P-P-P-P. Actually, it's just 2 P's. Y-S. Cappy's Original Wicked Hot Sauce. Find it on eBay. It's only $4, and it is excellent stuff. I have consumed
That's right, you bought some.
quite a bit of it, and it's... I have to consume quite a bit of it space it out, because if you consume quite a bit of it all at once, you will have to go to CJ Computer Repair to replace your taste buds. But stuff is really good. A lot of hot sauces are just heat. There's a lot of heat, but it's very flavorful stuff. Seriously, it's really good. I'm very glad that you had recommended it.
Oh, I'm sorry. I heard you were talking about Cappies, and then all of a sudden you started talking about the relationship between Ted and you. So
very hot indeed.
A lot of heat.
A lot of heat, baby. A lot of heat. You know what?
And let's move on. And, as we always talk about Cappy's hot sauce, which is fabulous. So, Todd, you were going to say something?
I was going to say, we will get to just another one of the reasons that baseball is such an amazing sport, because there's so much weird stuff you can pull out of baseball. Like
Justin Turner.
Like cork. and Justin Turner and Cowhide and Thread.
So, yeah, and we'll get to the Olympics. Actually, we have a few minutes. And before we get to the Olympics, let's just quickly talk about the NFL. So the Seahawks, for once, looked decent, and they kept Russell Wilson in for the first 2.5 quarters. He actually played really well against the Dallas team that's not terrible. So that was a good sign, because last week, based on the Vikings game,
right,
I was really worried. But he didn't take any sacks. He actually threw... I don't know if you... Did you see his touchdown pass to Tyler Lockett?
I did not see it, sir. Describe it to me. Describe it to me. Describe it to our listeners.
Actually, seriously, there is actually no description for it. It's a Russell Wilson play.
Gotcha.
And I will try to tweet it out. But basically, the pass is the easy part. He throws a touchdown dart to Tyler Lockett. I think it's a 9-yard touchdown pass. Anyway, it's one of these plays where Russell Wilson gets the snap and he's under pressure and he escapes it. I think 3 or 4 times, literally 3 or 4 times. In a crazy manner, and then just, throws the touchdown pass like on the line, and it's crazy, and it makes me thankful that we have Russell Wilson on the Seahawks because he does make a big difference. Go ahead.
Like crazy manner? Do you mean did he get like in a clown car or something? Because God, I would pay money to see that. That would be awesome.
It's funny when you mention clown car because when you see the highlight, when you see the highlight, it's almost like it looks like a clown car is surrounding him.
Right.
So it's really, really funny. So actually, I'm watching it right now, but I'm trying to get it sent to you. I cannot describe the play. So
I will view the play. Like your team, I was also really displeased with my team's performance. My team, because I own them. If I owned them, we wouldn't have had the problems we've had in the past 700 years with the Dolphins. But they were terrible last week. This week, of course, they're only playing the Falcons. The Falcons are not. Who knows? I mean, really, who knows? But the Falcons should be a decent team, and the Dolphins looked much better in Week 3. And, of course, Week 3 is, if any week in preseason matters, Week 3 is probably it. So that makes me happy that the Dolphins looked pretty darn good, and your Seahawks looked pretty darn good, and I'm not looking forward to Week 1 of the regular season. But other than that, I'm just glad that they addressed the issues that the Cowboys exposed in Week 2. Let's put it that way. So,
excellent. So, I think this is a good time to stop talking about the NFL because, of course, next week, I think, or a week after, at some point, I guess it's the week after, right? The 10th, that we are going to have a huge NFL show.
Yes.
Even on Baseball Beer and BBQ. And we'll be back with Mike Barnes and that's his last name, Big Mike, is Mike Barnes. For all of those young students going up the ranks in Houston, take his class. We'll be right back.
And now we are extremely happy to welcome back again Big Mike of the Orange Report. Back to the show again. Thanks for being on with us yet again and making this show somewhat tolerable. How are you?
Man, we're doing great. Just another typical 90-degree, 90% humidity day down in Houston, Texas.
Beautiful.
Yes, and I think Tennessee is becoming the new Texas because it is god-awful this summer. And this is way off subject, but, it's getting to be football season. Yeah, it's late August, but this time it's starting to feel like high school football is kicking in, and it's like, it's starting to cool off. But no, it's unbearable, and, of course, I blame Obama, as we all should, right? So, that's a joke. I don't really blame Obama. So, I blame Trump. So I have to start here after I've rambled for the last several seconds. Anyway, how does the Baylor situation really affect the Big 12 overall and for the long term?
Man, that has been a hot topic, and the thing of it is, I fall into the camp that it was a massive cover-up. Bryles knew, coaches knew. If you read the 12-page release of the Pepper Hamilton report, it was pretty clear what was going on. My biggest amazement in the whole thing is about half of the Baylor fan base, it may even be more than half, are just in complete denial. Some of them are even convinced that no rapes took place, that this was just some massive conspiracy to bring down Baylor. You always hear things and different things, and ironically, I don't think the worst of it has come out. I don't know if it ever will. I mean, the latest thing was was a massive gang rape by players and students at this party. Apparently it was on video. Somebody videotaped it. Coaches saw the video. I mean, there's so many things flying around. It's just unbelievable. But, the thing of it is my whole view on it. People say, well, Texas has had players that have raped people, this and that. And it's a pretty simple argument for me. Yes, a coach cannot control what another grown man is going to do on their own time. But what a coach can control, once he's privy to situations of serious bad behavior or felony offenses, is how he and the university react to those situations is how you can judge. I'm never going to judge a coach because a player goes out and beats up a woman or whatever. Like I say, adults are going to be adults, and you can't control that. But how they react to the situation and what they do once they become privy to the true story is how I will judge them. And there's enough facts out there that Baylor knew what was going on. They did nothing. They didn't care. It was all about winning. Now, really to your question, the long-term effects of the Big 12, I'm still under the belief that the Big 12 is dead. If it wasn't for the grant of rights going till about 2019, 2020, I think Oklahoma and Texas would probably be gone already, in which I don't think it's going to matter then, because I still think by then there's going to be new massive TV contracts, and you're going to see these 4 massive conferences by region, and a lot of teams are going to be left out. So what I think it does for Baylor long term, I think they could be on the outside looking in and will be relegated to a second-tier program for a while for a myriad of reasons because of that. Because I just, unless they really, in the next 8 or 9 years, change their tune, because this is not the first major controversy at Baylor. People forget the basketball players who murdered another basketball player, back in the 90s. So, this is not their first major cover-up and controversy. And, Big 12 expansion and all that, like I said, I still think at the end of the day, Texas and Oklahoma are leaving at some point.
Yeah, it reminds me a lot of the Penn State situation in a way, just how much cover-up there has been. And Art Briles, for him to say still that he didn't do anything wrong, as a human being, it just sets me back in the fact that this former head coach, thankfully, currently, can actually say, it's just, as a human being, at some point you have to step up, right, and say, yes, I should have had more control or had better control over the situation, and the university should as well. But, moving on to a more less globally thing, more sports, which can a lot of times take us away from realism of life, and that can be a good thing. And moving over to your team, University of Texas, do you think Swoops is the answer at quarterback, or will Buechele wind up with a job or somebody else?
Well, I think Shane Buechele is definitely the future of the program until the current commit, Sam Elliger, out of Austin Westlake, comes on board next year as a freshman, and then he'll take the reins in 2 or 3 years probably. Swoops, I'm honestly, he has been probably the greatest practice player in the history of football. I mean, all the practice reports, people that see practice, different sources say he looks like a man-child out there. But for some reason, when the lights come on, it's just the throws are long. He overthrows. He's slow in his progressions. It just has not worked. Now, with that said, he played about 10 snaps his freshman year. Mac Brown blew that and should have just let him redshirt. So it cost him a full year of getting an extra year of being able to adapt. He's playing on about the 3rd or 4th offensive coordinator in 4 years. He's probably played his first 3 years with probably the worst offensive line talent in Division I football, the worst skill wide receivers and running backs in football. So a lot of it is not his doing, but some of it is. So it's been a bunch of bad luck, being at Texas at the wrong time, probably at another school in the right situation. He could have been a decent quarterback. He hasn't been developed. Now, with that said, with the new offensive coordinator, Sterling Gilbert, what they're going to run this year, quicker throws, quicker progressions, we're going to see. The fan base is about, 90% probably wanting Shane Buechele to come out there as a true freshman. I had Rod Babers on my show the other night, Longhorn great, works for the Longhorn Network, and, we were talking about it, and basically Swoops is kind of looked at the fan base as it's kind of the last 5 years of misery, and we'd rather have a true freshman throw a pick six and see Swoops, do it again. But I think what's probably going to happen against Notre Dame is Charlie is probably going to roll with Swoops out there the first two series, but the leash is going to be very short. And then if it's not working, Swoops will have his normal, specialty package. We call it the 8-wheeler package. He'll get 10, 15 snaps a game with that package. And Shane Buechele will be the starter from here on out for the next 3 years. And I really see that how it's probably going to play out. All of the camp reports that Shane has looked tremendous. He's had some good days, bad days. But I mean, you've got to really, take a step back with your expectations saying, hey, this kid was 18 years old and playing high school football last year, and now he's going to be stepping out in front of 105,000 against Notre Dame's, the Oklahomas, the TCUs of the world. How effective is he really going to be? The difference is that either him or Swoops are going to see our offensive line is much improved. It's probably one of the best offensive lines we've had since 05, 06. Our wide receivers are probably the best we've had since the Vince Young era. There's no doubt. And our running backs are probably as good as we've had since Ricky Williams. So Strong has done a lot of things wrong, but one thing he has done right is he's replenished this roster with about 60, 65 of his recruits that are big-time players. They're young. I was telling somebody yesterday, they were asking me about it just in general, and I said, we've got about 13 seniors on our roster, so that ought to tell you something right there. To Division I team, you should have more seniors. Of those 13 seniors, only about 3 are going to play. Swoops is going to play a little bit. Perkins at the offensive line will probably play every down. And then we got one defensive tackle that's going to play about half the time. Everybody else is a sophomore or a freshman playing. So, a lot of talent, but very young.
Wow, that bodes kind of tough for this season, but it certainly looks better for the seasons following having a team that young. Other than the QB, who are a few key players on offense? Basically, like you said, everyone is going to have to support this freshman quarterback. Who are some of the standouts you expect to really help here?
Well, I think on offense it starts at the running back with Foreman. He was a 2-star recruit. It just goes to show sometimes how the recruiting services miss. And, if you go to all the boards now, they say, man, he's probably a high 4-star, maybe even a low 5-star. His brother, Armani Foreman, was really the big 4-star guy receiver. And I'll talk about him in a minute, but we're really going to start with Foreman. He's just an outstanding, about 245, 6'2", big guy that still has a bird. He busted about an 80-yarder against OU last year. So he's got breakaway speed, but he's a big guy. But where I think we're most talented right now is at the wide receivers position. We got a kid coming in, a true freshman, Colin Johnson. He wasn't a big camp circuit guy. He was a 4-star. If he probably went to camp, he would have been a 5-star. He's 6'6". His dad was a Longhorn great for us, so he was a legacy. You're going to see big things out of him. Obviously, Gerard Hurd has made this full switch from quarterback to wide receiver, and he has just been a beast in camp. He's going to probably be an inside receiver. You're going to see some jet sweeps with him because he brings a quickness and a speed and an athletic ability with his legs that's just natural. So I think Gerard Hurd's going to have a big year. Probably a guy I expect to catch over 1,000 yards this year as a returning starter, John Burt. He's out of Florida. He's also on the University of Texas track team, won the indoor hurdles in the Big 12. So, a lot of people say, well, track guys can't play football. Well, he just happens to be a football player that runs track. Those are some guys on offense I expect. We've got a true freshman center starting. He went out with an ankle injury about 2 weeks ago, but I think he's going to be ready for Notre Dame. He'll make his first start against Notre Dame. Zach Shackelford, he's about 300 pounds. He's just a beast. If anybody Googles his huddle film and watch what he did, he played against 2 big-time 5-star defensive tackles last year in high school, and he completely destroyed them. I think we got a steal in recruiting last year. Like I say, he's going to step in and be the starting center. So that's some guys I really expect big things out of on offense.
And Charlie's strongest strength, of course, it's always been defense. How is the D shaping up?
It's going to be young. Defensive line is probably the most suspect position. We do have one senior returning, Paul Boyette. He's really being pushed by some true freshmen I'm going to talk about. Then we got Puna Ford. who really started to come on last year. He really had a breakout game against OU, and he basically single-handedly dominated OU's offensive line. That was the big reason we were able to upset the Sooners in our big rivalry last year. But a couple kids that came in as true freshmen who are going to play a lot. The one I'm probably most impressed with is a kid out of Louisiana. His name is Christian Giles. It was Christian Giles Christmas. I think he's dropped the Christmas now. He's about 6'2", 300 pounds. He was a 4-star recruit, but he's a 5-star defensive tackle. And the reason he was only a 4-star, he was injured his whole junior year. Took him about half of his senior year to really get back going. But he really dominated. And had he played a whole junior year, I mean, he would have been wanted by everybody. I think he was another steal of the 2016 class. Scouts are already talking about his first step, just how amazing it is off the ball. Another kid that's a Houston kid is Jordan Elliot. Played here at Houston Westside. He got a lot of grief during recruiting. He had committed to U of H, Michigan, decommitted. He was very squirrely in recruiting, and everybody always felt he'd end up back at the Longhorns. And like about the day before signing day, he did flip to us. He's going to be another big-time player. He's been a little inconsistent in camp. I think it's just hitting the freshman wall, but he's going to definitely be in the rotation. And he was probably one of the hardest workers in the offseason. Another kid out of Louisiana, Gerald Wilburn, is another guy. His dad was a football coach. He's a 3-star. Another guy that kind of came on late, and that's one thing I'll say about Charlie and his recruiting. It's completely different than what Longhorn. Mac always filled the class up early. Charlie is really evaluating guys and trying to get on these guys that really show late that they haven't peaked. And those are some guys right there that really are. That Wilburn is going to be, again, we're going to have 3 true freshmen. And I can honestly say now, I'm not concerned about the defensive line because all 3 of them are going to, and luckily none of the 3 are going to have to give us a lot of reps. They're going to give us just enough reps to spill the guys that will be starting. Obviously, Malik Jefferson is the face of our program. He's coming back from his sophomore year. He kind of hit a wall last year as a true freshman. A lot of people don't know it. He played with an ankle injury, shoulder injury, and about game 6 or 7, he developed some stomach ailment. There's still a mystery of what it was, but he was basically sick and throwing up all week long and dehydrated for about 4 games, and it really affected his play. But he showed up in every game, but Baylor he was out and played like that. But he's fully healthy, and I expect for him to have just an outstanding year. He's just a great young man, and probably will end up being our biggest recruit since Vince Young. If Charlie Strong doesn't pull him in, Malik was the number 1 rated player in Texas, number 1 rated linebacker, 5-star. He's just such a dynamic personality. Other kids want to play with him. And if Strong survives this and gets it turned around, it will be a direct result of him recruiting Malik Jefferson. One more kid I want to mention real quick that I got to see quite a bit last year because he plays at a high school right up the road from here out of Houston Davis. Is a kid, his nickname's the Shark, Jeffrey McCullough. He's about 6'2", 245, runs about 4.40. He's going to be in the rotation. He is going to be a future superstar. I tell everybody right now, remember that name, Jeffrey McCullough. He's going to play on Sundays. And then in the defensive backfield, a kid that I think nobody knows about him. He's a Florida recruit that Strong got year before last. He played a lot as a freshman. He's a sophomore this year. He's not a social media guy. He just shows up every day, works hard. But he is what we call a true lockdown corner, and this is the main reason our defense is going to be improved this year. Last year we had to play a lot of zone. We've got 2 corners now, including this kid Devontae Davis, who you can put on another team's best receiver, and he'll take away half the field. He'll do basically what Deion Sanders used to do to NFL teams. You can put him out on an island, and it just changes the whole way you can do things with your linebackers and other people now. So people need to remember that name, not just for Texas football, but this kid's going to be a top 20 first-round pick in a few years. He'll probably win the Thorpe Award. He's already predicted to be first-team All-Big 12. Devontae Davis, he is a stud.
Hey, Todd, you know, when Mike's talking, it reminds me when he mentions the senior class versus the freshman sophomore.
Yes.
Does it remind you of any other team that may be ranked in the top 10 currently?
It's really funny,
yeah.
isn't it?
It sounds a lot like Tennessee, which is good for the future of Texas.
Plus an offensive stud named Hurd. That's weird.
Yeah, that is weird.
What's going on?
Actually, yeah. So Texas opens against Notre Dame. Obviously, Notre Dame is, you know, it's a team that's lately been good year in, year out. How do you see this game playing out?
You know, I have not touched it yet because I've done my analysis of everything. Notre Dame lost 10 guys to the NFL. They're not as talented as they were, but obviously they're going to still start a lot of sophomores and juniors that have been in the weight program. They're going to still have a lot of experience. I think their quarterbacks are both still good. I think Kelly is playing. I think he knows who he's going to go with full time. He says they're both going to play. We'll see how that plays out. But, you know, the key is, and I hate to already have an excuse. I mean, right now our starting left guard, really, our starting left guard left practice yesterday on a cart. I've already got reports that it's a little worse than they thought. So he's got a high ankle sprain. So he may or may not be back for the Notre Dame game. Our starting center, the freshman Shackelford, he's been out for 2 weeks. And our starting right guard has been out for 2 weeks. So we got three starting offensive line right now that are 50-50 if they're going to play in the first game. So, I mean, but, you know, I'm not going to use, injuries as an excuse, but, I mean, obviously it is because we still don't have a lot of depth. I mean, we've got three true freshmen backing them up that will probably play if those kids don't go. So, I mean, we're just young. A lot of talent, but young. I'm not really to give a prediction yet, but I honestly feel because our team, you know, I've been saying this for 4 or 5 years. When we walked out, we didn't even look the part. I mean, we didn't have a lot of speed. We weren't built up. This team passes the eyeball test for the first time in a long time. I mean, they walk out on the field in shorts and, I mean, they are full-ass grown men now. I mean, they are built, and we've got more speed. I mean, this team probably, I mean, other than a Vince Young, who's, you know, a once-in-a-lifetime player, this team probably has more team speed right now on it as a whole than the 2005 national championship team. We've got 3 or 4 young linemen that are going to be better than 3 of those guys that are still playing in the NFL from that 2005 team. So I said this is the most talent that's been on campus in probably 10 years. So the future is bright. What it's going to look like this year, I mean, you could have an injury or two, and we could be 6-6, and Strong's probably going to get fired. I don't know if that'll be the right decision or not. It depends how. Or some things could go right, and we could be 10-2. So there's such a wide variance. It's the first time that I'm scared to make a prediction because you just don't know how it's going to go. And I think what's going to happen, and I really see how this is going to play out. We're probably going to go out and beat some teams that we're not supposed to yet, like Notre Dame, and we're probably going to have a skunker somewhere and lose to somebody we're not doing. It's probably all going to even out. But based on the schedule, what I know about the team, even with the injuries, if this team doesn't go 8-4, it's going to be a huge disappointment for them. I think at 8-4, Strong comes back, we win a bowl, go 9-4, and then 2017 and 18 are really looking like potential. You know, you could have playoff runs. Things go right, you get to 10-2. Then you're just really rolling. But I think 8-4 is a fair number. Anything less than that, 7-5. I think it's 50-50 if Strong's let go or not. I really do.
I just want to interject before my next question that your analysis of the team, full-ass grown men, you are not going to get that from a Yankee. I love that. That's just awesome.
Yeah, that's definitely a Southern Texas slang. Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah, but you know, everybody, we know what you mean. I mean, it's a great comment. I mean, you know what that means. It's a big difference between having a bunch of kids out there. So I love it. What's your projection for the Big 12 overall? How do you see the conference shaking out?
Yeah, I think TCU is going to be good because, I mean, Gary Patterson's a good coach. I think their offense is going to take a step back. I mean, you can't lose the weapons they did. You know, they got the kid Kenny Hill from A&M to transfer. I think he's going to be a pretty good player. But, I mean, they had so many injuries on defense last year that they ended up playing about 8 or 9 true freshmen, and, you know, redshirt freshmen and sophomores. And a lot of those guys are pretty good players. So I think their defense is going to carry them. So I think TCU's right there. I mean, Oklahoma, obviously, they've got, the most starters. I mean, everybody's picked them. They picked to be a playoff team. So I think those would have to be the two favorites. I think if things fall right, I think Texas could be right there. I mean, but again, I think we're going to lose. We're going to drop somebody, that we shouldn't. The Oklahoma game has proven last year, records and those things mean nothing in that game. I mean, it's a rivalry. They could beat us. We could beat them. So I really think that's a toss-up. I think the game that is important, all games are important for fans, but I think a game that Strong has got to do better is obviously against TCU. The last 2 years, the wheels have come off. He has not coached well in that game. They have had better talent. That game, competing with TCU, is really gonna at the end of the year is gonna really tell me personally if Strong is the right fit for our team. If we go into that and get blown out the third year in a row, they can pull the trigger for me. I mean, because we can't. The way I look at Strong is we can't have any more 24-0 Iowa State games, and we can't have any more 50-7. I think most fans, if we're 7-5, 8-4, for me it's 8-4, and we were competitive in the other 4 games, and you see progress with Shane Bichelle, the other true freshman, and you at least feel like the program is heading in the right direction, because I feel like it is. But, I mean, if we're sitting there at 7-5 and you lost by 4 touchdowns to 3 different teams, man, I think it's going to be real tough for me and most fans to accept Charlie Strong coming back in 2017.
Listening to your podcast, The Orange Report, which, by the way, is awesome, clearly the Iowa State game kind of bothered you just a little bit because you mentioned about 89 times. And I would too, so, yeah, I totally get that. Since you gave us such a powerful prediction on Notre Dame, I'm sure you have a call for all the 4 playoff teams and the national championship. What do you think is going to happen?
Well, yeah, what's funny is me and my co-host, we started something last year that was kind of cool. Our first 4 in, we did it every week all the way to the end, and we tracked it. It was amazing how much it changed from week to week. And sometimes who we thought were the best 4 were nowhere in the top 7 or 8. It was kind of interesting. It was a lot of fun. But I mean injuries, you don't know what's going to happen.
Right.
But I mean, sitting there, I guess August 26th. I like LSU. I think I'm going to go with LSU out of the SEC. I really like Clemson, but something just I feel funny about them with all the expectations that maybe they're gonna slump back a little bit. So I'm going to take Florida State there. Mm-hmm. And then I'm actually going to go with Ohio State out of the Big Ten.
Terminate this call.
And then I'm going to go with, that's 3. My 4th one is tough. I got about 3 teams right there.
Tennessee. No, I'm just joking.
Well, Tennessee can beat LSU in the SEC title game. They may have a shot. I'll tell you what. I'm going to go with. I'll go with just Oklahoma because based on paper, I mean, they could easily run the table if they stay healthy and things go right. And even if they go 11-1 and lose to Ohio State, I mean, I still think they could get in because I think Ohio State's going to be real good.
Todd is originally from Michigan, so I think he took a personal affront to you saying.
I was trying to. If y'all got a few minutes, I know how you feel. My mom lives up in Jackson, Michigan now, and I went up there this summer and visited her up in Jackson. And I'll tell you what, it was the strangest thing, and I didn't realize how close Ohio and Michigan. So I went over to Cedar Point and traveled into Ohio. Yeah. And what was so funny when I was over at Cedar Point and I brought up Michigan. I mean, Ohio people said, they would just give me, they'd say I wouldn't be caught dead in that state. And then I was over in Michigan and say I went to Cedar Point, and they go, I won't even go over there. That's the worst state in the history. That rivalry up there is thick year round. I mean, it was pretty interesting.
It's fun. It's a lot of fun.
Well, I'll be honest. When I've moved around a lot, and I grew up a University of North Carolina fan. I think I have a pretty decent shot of being a decent team again this year. And I lived in Cleveland for a while. When I lived in Cleveland, I also still stayed a University of North Carolina fan. So thought that was interesting. But do you have any pick for that? And we're putting you on the spot because. Actually, I think you brought up a good idea. I think every week on Baseball Beer and Barbecue, we should have our first 4 in for the college football and just realize how wrong we are when that actually happens at the end of the year.
Yeah.
So, and we have to credit Mike. every time.
Hey, that's right. We should call it the Big Mike First Four In. That's what we should call it.
Not blame me for the stupid picks, just for the idea.
Right, but just for the sponsorship of it. So actually, we should the Orange Report or something. But you have a Heisman pick. Say the easy one is like Leonard Fournette or somebody like that. Maybe somebody off the wall possibly winning the Heisman.
No, obviously, I think the Watson kid out of Clemson, it's his to lose. I think most people got their mind made up. If he goes out there and duplicates half of what he did last year, I mean, he's going to be right there. I mean, the kid from Stanford, I mean, is all world. He's going to be in the hunt. But I think when it's all said and done, Watson's going to be the Heisman winner.
Gotcha. Mike, as always, you put us to shame because you're much more emotive and you're much more well-spoken than we are. So we thank you again for being on. But will you let people know where they can find your show and you on social media?
Well, absolutely. I was hoping I would at least get one political question while I was on.
Oh, yeah. Well, I got to say this.
From two political guys like you, man, I got to get at least one now. Come on.
It's funny. Okay, so I'll say this. So I read your posts on Facebook, and I agree with almost all of them.
Right.
But did you post on Facebook that you haven't, and this is no judgment, but I just want to make sure I understood it. Did you say you hadn't voted for a Democratic presidential candidate in a long time?
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, it's been a while because, I mean, even though I may lean in a lot of those things, if I don't like the individual, man, I know it sounds crazy. I voted for Bill Clinton twice, and I know this is going to sound crazy. And I always tell people, somebody that has some left leanings in Texas is never going to be as far left as somebody at Northeast or another state, because I still am in Texas. I'm a big Second Amendment guy. I own guns. That drives most liberals nuts. I have no issue with me carrying my gun in my truck. I carry it everywhere I drive, So that's what I've always said. My liberal friends think I'm too conservative. My conservative friends think I'm a socialist. So I'm a man without a party. I'm just a man with ideas, I guess, and beliefs. But I know y'all are going to cringe because I like him, because I met him. I don't think he was as bad as most liberal. I voted for George W. Bush both times because I just could not stand the Democratic candidate. I thought they were frauds. And it pains me. I'm not a big Hillary fan. I love her husband. She just something about me rubs her raw. But I can tell you right now, I'm not voting for that idiot on the right. I will never vote for that. For me, when the presidential election is as crazy as it is right now, and I believe in voting. I vote in every election. Is what affects me more is my local, my school boards, my Texas reps and right. Those things. And usually if I vote Democrat down here, every now and then, in my area we'll get somebody in. But for the most part, I mean, we're a right state. I mean, every state office holder is Republican. Almost every state office holder, every national. I mean, it is what it is. But, believe it or not, I will vote for some Republicans down here in Texas for some local races because they're not Ted Cruz type Republican that are so far right that you think you're living in Germany or something. So, I mean, so they call themselves a Republican, but they're almost independent because they're good for education here. They put in good policy for kids. And I let a lot of that drive my deal because that's my full-time profession, working with kids. So if I see somebody that does anything politically that's bad for kids, I don't care if they're sitting on the left or the right, I don't like them. So my view on politics a lot of times is driven by that, kids. And then the second part of that is, I know y'all got to go, so I don't want to be long-winded, is, I work in a predominantly minority school district, and I work with a lot of black kids and black parents who care just about as much as any white kid does in their parents. They're just involved. So all of this rhetoric about the black community. So if somebody like Trump and the racist, I'm just so anti-racist and social justice on protecting, kids that have a tough go at it, that are just as good as everybody else. So those two strong beliefs really drive me where I go with candidates. So.
Yep. And I can't blame you and I live in a state currently that I've lived in Washington, which was very far left, and I live in Tennessee currently, which is right. And it's always like, well, I don't think, to me, Hillary's not as bad as Trump, which is exactly why I'm voting for Jill Stein. So that's pretty much how it goes.
And I didn't want to say. Go ahead, Mike.
And the funny thing of it is Trump's about done. I mean, Hillary just needs to sit there now and just not implode. And I mean, she's going to win by. It's going to. I mean, I don't know if it's going to be as bad as Reagan-Mondale, but it's going to approach that because I mean, now there's red states that are. I mean, Missouri's about could go. So I mean, Trump's done now. I mean, it's over unless something crazy happens.
I do a couple points that you made, Mike, which absolutely I agree with, and I'm sure, and I know Lee does too. It's you don't vote for parties, you vote for issues, and you vote for the people who agree with the issues that you support. And there are plenty of times when Republicans know exactly what they're talking about because they're good people, they're intelligent, and there are plenty of times when there are Democrats who are completely off the charts. I mean, personally, I think it happens more often that the Democrats usually are closer to some form of reality, unlike Mr. Trump. But yeah, you've got to vote your issues, and especially people need to. If you don't even vote for the presidential candidate, if you don't want to, if you're that adamant about it, fine, don't vote. But go vote for your local issues because that affects your day-to-day life so much. Absolutely, make sure you go out there and pay attention to who's running for your school board, local representatives, and all the rest of it. I'm really glad you made that point.
Yeah, but with that said, I'll let y'all go. I know y'all are busy and got other guests. I appreciate y'all's time. But as always, I can be found on Twitter at MBHornsFan. If you want to listen to the Orange Report, just follow me on Twitter. I usually tweet out the link to the show. It can be found on iTunes, Stitcher, TuneIn app. Just, Google Orange Report, Big Mike. It'll come up in all the search engines. As always, I appreciate coming on with y'all. We could probably go hours and hours and talk sports and politics. And
we could.
And it would be awesome. And it would be completely awesome.
You were right. It would be. Mike, thanks so much for being with us. We'll talk to you soon.
Man, I appreciate y'all, man. Good luck. All right.
All right. Good night.
Thank you.
Oh.
Yeah, that's the thing. Big Mike he's such a terrible guest, isn't he? He has no opinions and he has no knowledge.
I feel like hopefully I come across as like the least self-serving person because I really wanted to say, I should move to Austin because I've been there once and that was the weekend they beat Oklahoma last year. So
you should have brought that up again. I think you did last time we talked to him. Actually,
of course,
you took credit for the victory, as I recall.
Well, of course I did.
Yeah.
I was playing quarterback for Oklahoma. The other thing is that was the weekend that Tennessee beat Georgia. So it was like all this kind of craziness while I was nowhere near either team. So I'm not sure what that says, but I should look up North Carolina. And I'm surprised he didn't mention Trubinsky, who obviously is a Heisman candidate.
That certainly was.
So I joke, but the guy's really good. Just check out North Carolina football games. So anyway, yeah, Mike, yeah, it's kind of funny because I like how he brought up the fact that we talk politics and he wanted to talk politics with us. That's great. And we do that. Yeah, and he mentioned it. What do you think about the Trump apology? and then of course he's come back and he's tried to get the minority group is out there that he thinks would vote for him. He's obviously out of his mind. I'll say this: I grew up in a town that was government, good education, great educational system. We had diversity within the group as well. Within the 27,000 people, we had African Americans, we had Asian Americans, we had European Americans, and I totally understand that I need to pause this for 1 second. Be right back.
Okay. Where'd you get the pizza from?
Well, that's funny because I just started recording. So that's anybody listening to the show at this point. I did order pizza, and the pizza just arrived. So, in the Happy Hour Network studios, they deliver to the studios, and we thank Ted for allowing us to have these studios.
They're lovely, Ted. Thank you.
So anyway, back to politics.
Yes.
Yeah, it's funny because we talked off air about how Hillary seems to have such a big lead.
Right.
And it's really like a sporting event where you're up so big in the third quarter that only bad things can happen from that point on, really.
Right.
So, and I think we're both hoping, am I going to vote for Hillary? I on the record, as far as I know, I'm going to vote for Jill Stein. Now, if I lived in a state like Florida, for instance, or South Carolina, even as it turns out this year, it seems like, that was maybe going either way, I would vote for Hillary because my vote would count more than it will in the red state that I live in. So, yeah, it's one of those things where I'm voting for the candidate who I most identify with nationally, but, you know, most of the nation doesn't have that quandary, hopefully. Their vote makes a difference. So, and I can't imagine that at this point, you know, Trump would be interesting enough to the general populace to get elected. But it also, as we talked about before the pizza rocked, that, you know, he's trying to get these minority voters, and he's somehow trying to tell them that Hillary is not on their side. This is Hillary Clinton we're talking about. She's spent decades trying to help people who are not white. So, you know, give me a break as far as that goes.
Yeah, his reaching out to non-white voters in front of like 98% white crowds is kind of funny. And apparently he's not quite sure what his immigration policy is going to be, because he was going to make a speech in Colorado this week, canceled it. He was going to make a speech in Arizona next week, canceled it. And of course, he has irritated the hell out of people, out of conservatives like Sarah Palin, Rush Limbaugh, Ted Cruz, 3 people who have just lambasted him for his apparent flip-flop on immigration, because now his latest tweet, I guess he doesn't have a policy, he just has thoughts, and they pop into his head and he says them. Seriously, I mean, it's about what it is, because that's why everything changes constantly with him, because he's trying now, I shouldn't say he is, his campaign staff, his third campaign staff in 2 months, has told him, oh, you need to move towards the center. So now occasionally he'll release statements, oh, well, maybe we'll have a limited amnesty program, et cetera, which is, why would anybody believe that when a week ago, you know, he went back to the whole thing with the wall. He was just mad, you know, he's talking about the wall again last week, and which is how he reaches out to
he was talking about the Pink Floyd album?
Yes, he's reaching out to that constituency, because
well, that makes sense.
He's got to get somebody to vote for him. It's
Wait, it's funny that he mentions talking about Pink Floyd's The Wall when he is Geldof's character.
Isn't he, though? Yeah. It's very frustrating that a lot of his supporters are just blind to the fact that he literally is desperately trying to say whatever it's going to take to get elected at this point. And he's been doing that because he was reaching out to I suppose the correct term is the alt-right. We used to call them fascists, but now they're alt-right.
Because of the keyboard.
Yeah. All right. And oh, my God, I just did it and it came up fascist. That's so strange. Got a little picture of Hitler and Mussolini all together. It is really frustrating that...
and Franco. Let's not forget Franco. James Franco.
Lovely man. He... That really good movie. James Franco would have been great in Pan's Labyrinth. I would have loved to have seen that. With the eyes on his fingers. It's just frustrating, because if you bring up facts, then people say, well, you're just attacking. It's like, because, you know, had a big discussion about his Second Amendment thing, and how he claimed that it was, well, what I meant was voting. And, you know, if you put in the words, maybe they can vote, in that, it makes no sense, because he said, past tense, Hillary's been elected. There's nothing you can do. I don't know.
Hold on. He said Killary. Let's get it right.
So you insert, maybe they can vote, I don't know. How does that make any sense? He's not aware of they can vote. He's not sure if they can vote. Vote on what? Because she's already been elected in the context of his statement. So it's clear it makes no sense, and you bring that up and say, well, you're just being attacking. It's like, I guess if I'm attacking people who can't critically think and don't understand how language works, yes, I'm attacking. You know, I mean, but they can post just ridiculous stuff with, you know, trucks with cow catchers on front for labeled protesters, and look how funny this is. And if you call them out, oh, I was just joking.
Well, let me say one thing. I totally understand why Trump wants to build a wall, because as I mentioned earlier, I grew up in a town with a lot of diversity, and, you know, over the years it's become less so, probably because the federal government's not as involved. So building a wall, I mean, we're getting all this scum from the western counties moving in, and it's bringing down I didn't say anything funny. And it's bringing down the school system. And there are a bunch of, few-teethed white people. And it's just sad. I mean, the property taxes are not being paid as they should, and the school system is still great, but, long term I'll worry about it when Morgan County or Scott County people move in. It's just that we need more diversity. I mean, I'm sort of making a joke. Yes,
but we do need more diversity.
We seriously need more diversity like we used to.
Well, and you remember when I told you the story, I don't think I ever mentioned it on our show, but when we first came to the area, back when I was married, and first came to the Oak Ridge area, and we were driving around looking at places in the area, and we were driving in Scott County, and this is not a joke. We made a left turn on it wasn't a dirt road or something, but just, some little road out in Scott County.
Oh, I didn't know they had paved roads.
They have two. And
Interstate 75.
And there was a Jeep ahead of us after we made this turn. The passenger was wearing a funny, pointy white hood, and I am not joking.
Oh, my God.
I am not joking. Now, granted, that was, about 35 years ago, thankfully. And so maybe now he's dead of his, or her, for that matter, because I don't know, because he was wearing a funny hat that was pointy.
True.
But hopefully they're dead of their self-hatred. But man, that was really disturbing. So obviously I don't think I've ever been in Scott County since then. So yeah, and that maybe they were just visiting. Maybe they were visiting from another county. That's possible. But that's really disturbing when you see something like that in broad frickin' daylight.
Yeah,
man alive. That's so. It's
so if they were visiting, hopefully they were disliked because of their white pointy hood. And some guy who may not be wearing a white pointy hood, but probably should also be disliked. So Ryan Lochte had an incident in Brazil where he is now in the United States, but may have to go back to Brazil because of filing a false report on police. This guy has won a lot of gold medals. Yes. He's also been in a lot of trouble. Yes. The same as his cousin, from what I understand, Hope Solo, who has now been suspended basically from the United States national team for 6 months, even though it really should be a lifetime ban. The United States did a lot of good things, and the gymnastics team I thought brought a lot of people together. The women's gymnastics team, because they were phenomenal, but they were full of joy. And the United States far and away won the most medals, gold medals, overall medals. But, for the world who's listening out there, we're also not proud of Hope Solo or Ryan Lochte.
No. A little-known trivia fact about Ryan Lochte, of course, he went to the University of Florida, and the ACT is used in the South still quite a bit. A lot of people don't realize that, but he actually has as many medals as points he scored in the ACT, 12. So it's
probably
pretty
true.
Awesome. Pretty big round of applause for Ryan Lochte. I doubt that he could have scored a 12 on an ACT. Man, that guy's stupid. That might be one of his. I have never heard anything that he's a racist. That might be one of the few things to recommend the guy, other than apparently he can breathe on his own. I mean, that's pretty good too for him. But man, that guy is so stupid.
Which is why he's such a good swimmer, because he's a mouth breather. So, yeah, but for Hope Solo, and we talked about this a little bit about how she called the other team cowards. Right. Sorry, you got beat. Calling them cowards is a little bit over the line, but this isn't the first time she's been in trouble. And Lochte is just
been in trouble for much more serious things. Do you think the punishment of Hope Solo is? Do you think it's effective? Do you think it matters? I mean,
I think she should be banned for a lifetime.
Okay, because and I'm assuming you're serious the way you said.
Yeah, I'm not just based on this event, but based on the past events.
Worst thing she's done. The ban she's got, I mean, she's banned from international competition for 6 months. What, they have 2 friendly matches in those 6 months?
Yeah, pretty
much. Big deal.
Yeah.
So that, I mean, it's PR, and PR is important. I totally understand that that's important. But people who are saying, why would they ban her for that comment? It's not just for that comment. And I don't know if she should be banned permanently, but I certainly would lean towards that more than a meaningless 6-month ban. And basically, it's like, and the analogy has been made by a lot of sportscasters, and it's like you have a starting pitcher and you ban him for 4 games. He's not going to miss a start. What does that mean?
Exactly.
It really is absolutely meaningless, and it's a really I mean, sports is especially Olympics, sportsmanship is supposed to be kind of a big part of that. That is not a good face. That is not a good face for the team. So,
well, she gets her sassiness from her father, Hom.
Yes, she does.
One thing I will say, we brought up a question, or Todd did, in the show sheet, as it's called professionally, about whether Rio was unjustly maligned as a city and a venue for the Olympics, or Brazil.
You misread that. It's malignant.
Brazil as a whole. And, Tokyo is up next, and, of course, Japanese will have probably a lot more expendable money to spend on that. But
yes.
I'll say this. I thought Brazil pulled it off. I think the one thing, man, and this is totally Homer shit, but if anybody knows me, I'll root for the United States and Ireland and then Germany, basically, in that order. And I'm a huge fan of German soccer.
Fascist.
Well, they're no longer fascists, but a big fan of German soccer. And the team that they fielded was still excellent soccer players, but basically like a... I'm sorry, what? Yes, Angela Merkel was out there in goal, which, she was really good, by the way. So, no, but it was really their second string the whole time. What they did is they approached the Olympics probably the way you should, because it's already such an international sport, in that we have a whole bunch of young guys. We're going to get them experience on an international stage because these are going to be the next generation, which is exactly what they did. And to make it to the finals and to barely lose to Brazil, and, of course, Brazil went crazy on Neymar's goal. I mean, it was great for Brazil, but I was watching it and tweeted about it, and it was good for them, but really it's such a watered-down German side that they beat, that it really goes to show how much the Olympics don't matter to most soccer nations. Of course, they matter to Brazil. The games are in Brazil.
You are such an apologist, sir, and you are absolutely right. Yeah, a lot of the sports, soccer, tennis, I mean, this is not the pinnacle at all of that sport. So it makes perfect sense to get younger people, a really intense, serious, heavy-duty international competition that really doesn't matter that much. I mean, that's brilliantly played by Germany. Seriously. And it doesn't take anything away from Brazil's win. Not at all. They beat the competition that was out there. They pulled the Denny Green. So, yeah, I mean, overall, I think the Olympics went off really well. They had some weird green water, and they had some dopes, which were Americans, but they have, obviously they couldn't control that. Overall, I thought they did a really good job, and 0 cases of Zika. I mean, there were a lot more cases of Zika 2.5 hours from me. So, good job on their part, and obviously the Zika scare was much overblown, and the crime infested, other than Ryan Lochte, who is apparently involved in a very serious altercation.
It's the green water.
That wasn't an issue, so they did a really good job, considering that they had a much smaller budget to deal with, which their economy went in the tank. Kind of happens. So they can't really be faulted for not being able to spend untold billions like they thought they could when they first got the gig. What was it, 7 years ago they won the bid?
Yeah.
And their economy went in the tank like the day after they won, basically. So they did a really good job. There weren't any issues. Like I said, I caught about 15 minutes of the opening ceremonies. I don't care. I saw the Japanese Prime Minister turn into Mario, which was cute. So that was neat at the closing ceremonies. Other than that, there can't be any complaints about how these Olympics went off. NBC's coverage was pretty crappy, but again, they have nothing to do with that in Brazil, so
yeah, very
not
true.
a bad show.
And again, the green water was not natural. It was sponsored, as is this part of the program, by Gatorade. So,
I wonder what it'd feel like to dive into a pool of Gatorade.
It would.
It's slimy. Tastes really good though.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay. I don't want to. I don't want to disparage Gatorade, as they are sponsoring our program right now.
Yeah, but the really green Gatorade, that's not a good flavor.
Actually, that's the flavor I like the most.
The really
seriously,
the really green stuff, like they had in the diving pool. Wow, no.
So I've tweeted out, and people listening to the show, the final team picture for the Dodgers, and I have tagged Todd in that. It's an interesting. I'll wait while Todd pulls it up on his Twitter. It's an interesting photo of how they did the final team photo for this year's 2016 version of the Los Angeles Dodgers. Todd must have just seen it. He's been on the disabled list 27 times all by himself. It's pretty nice. That's young
awesome.
Vin Scully.
That's awesome.
Yeah, they're all wearing young Vin Scully mask, including Puig, who actually is several miles away in AAA.
Yes.
So we have, of course, baseball. Justin Turner. I mentioned that as a joke, and not really a joke. He's hit 20 home runs since June 4th. Really a guy, as crazy as it sounds, who should be in the top 10 for National League MVP because he has really helped carry this Dodger offense the entire year. His numbers are crazy as far as his sabermetric numbers, and they have been since he became a Dodger and started playing every day. Justin Turner, 31-year-old, came over from the Mets. A little-known guy because everybody is, we hear Puig and maybe Adrian Gonzalez and so on and so forth. Justin Turner's been a huge cog in that team, and one big reason they're in first place currently.
Did you say he has a big cog? That's weird, man.
He has been a big cog.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for the clarification.
I wouldn't know.
He may.
So big, and of course Todd mentioned the 27 players on the DL for the Dodgers. That's not true. That actually happened in 1983 to 1987. So it feels like it anyway. So Big Papi having a huge season for the Dodgers. People didn't know he played for the Dodgers. What is up with Big Papi? Because he's having an amazing season at his age, and I'm sure he's not on PEDs anymore. Allegedly, does he really retire, or does he come back next year?
Everything you read. He's retiring. And honestly, if he comes back next year, he's an idiot. Because look at the season. Seriously, look at the season A-Rod had last year. Pretty good year. Came back this year and is like, man, this guy sucks. And the same thing with Tejera. Tejera had a pretty good year last year. This year, terrible. I mean, it can go that quickly. And I'm not talking about, you stop taking your PEDs or anything. I mean, it's like players age, and for a lot of them, when they hit the wall, I mean, they don't hit a wall, they hit a cliff and they go off it. And he absolutely needs to go out. I mean, he says, it's tougher to get ready and blah, blah, blah. I mean, I just heard part of a interview with Strawberry, which was really interesting. He was like 54, I think. And they were saying, do you think he could hit?
Was Strawberry Shortcake?
Yeah, Strawberry Shortcake. Adorable. And she said that, I think I could still hit, even at this age, if I got in the cage, got a little work in. But someone else would have to run for me. I mean, he actually did say that, which was funny.
She has short legs.
Very short legs. But it's like there's so much wear and tear on you, and that's what Big Papi has said too. Is just getting ready. It's just such a grind now, and he's a DH. It's like it's such a grind to get ready to walk up to the plate 4 times a game, maybe 5, and trot down to first base 30 times, run around 30 times. Sometimes I'll have to run the first. I mean, there's not a lot of wear and tear on a body when you're a DH compared to other positions in baseball and compared to other sports. So the fact that he's saying that, he absolutely needs to retire because, my God, why would you not want to go out on top? How many people get to do that? I mean, he could win the MVP. Easily, he could win the MVP with the season he's having. Man, he needs to retire after this. It's like he's having... I don't know, is this his best season ever, possibly? No one's had a season like this at his age, and I really, really hope there's no PEDs involved, and I hope there aren't any whispers, and I'm sure there are, because, we're talking about it, but, it's really cool. I don't like the Red Sox, but Big Papi's cool, just because of the way he conducts himself, his, basically, I don't really care attitude about the whole response, obviously, to the Boston Marathon, that bombing, and the way he just kind of immediately stood up and kind of took control about it and helped people get past that. Pretty awesome. So I'm happy to see him having the season he's having. But, man, he needs to – as soon as he puts that bat down for the last time, he does not need to pick it up again until he is in an old-timer game.
Yeah, and the next question you brought up on the show sheet, of course, is Albert Pujols. Never heard of this guy. Past Mark McGwire.
Frank McGwire.
Frank McGwire.
Yes.
And we'll pass the great Frank Robinson.
Mark Robinson.
Jackie Robinson. Any day for now, 9th all-time in home runs, and why is there no buzz? I'll say this. It's not only that it's interesting that there's no buzz about Albert Pujols, there's also no buzz about Miguel Cabrera,
right?
Who is putting up another great season. Right. So is it do you think people get so just used to their great, and Pujols has had the last few years have not even been anywhere close to Cabrera's numbers, right. And they're really the same age. But is it just that people got so used to their incredible numbers that any step back at all, even though they're having great seasons, is a disappointment?
That's part of it, but I really think more it's because of the PED era. PEDs. PEDs dispensers. That'd be really cool. Just have like a giant Barry Bonds Pez head, but still tiny little Peds coming out. And they're flax flavored. The numbers just kind of don't mean what they used to mean anymore, which is really, really sad. So, so Pujols is number 10 now, and and who knows what he's going to do tonight. By tomorrow he could be 9th all time because he's just 2 homers behind Frank Robinson. That used to be a big deal, and now it's like, where does it show up? Page 9 of the sports section? I mean, there's not even a page 9 of the sports section.
He also plays for Mike Trout. That's one, or with Mike Trout.
The Trouts. So it's really unfortunate, but that's what's happened to the numbers. Almost don't mean anything now as far as a historical perspective. Every day, of course they do, but to me, that's what is so bad about the whole PED situation is it's ruined the context of the numbers, the historical perspective, because you're not sure what numbers mean anymore. How much of, A-Rod is a fraud, is at 696, and that's where he's going to stay. And it's like, okay, but what does that mean? Would he have hit 500 if he'd stayed clean? I don't know. Probably. It is so frustrating that this has ever happened, because I would much rather celebrate A-Rod having not done any of this crap and winding up with, say 487 home runs as a shortstop, and he should have been playing shortstop instead of Jeter most of those years too, because he was a better shortstop, which good for him for at least for taking the bullet and moving to third. But it's turned this into Pujols' 10th all time, and it's like, it's a side note, because people know the number 1 list. You got to take some of those. I don't mean officially in the records, but I mean in your mind. All of those homers aren't legitimate. The same thing with A-Rod. All of them are not legitimate, and it's really, really frustrating. It sucks. It just really, really sucks. Same thing with Same thing with Big Papi having a historic season, and in the back of most people's minds is like,
he's probably back on the juice.
And it's awful, and hopefully he's not. And I'd say odds are he isn't, because the guy's taking good care of himself, and he had a track record of having established himself as a terrific hitter forever. I mean, he passed Ted Williams, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, which there's almost like no buzz about that. And again, it's because of the associated stigmas. Did he take anything? Did he not? And it really, really, really sucks. To me, that's about the only thing bad about baseball is that question mark is out there all the time. I mean, in a way, it was kind of cool that there was a little bit of doubt about Piazza because he got to go in with Griffey, and that's such an awesome pairing. But he shouldn't have had to wait. And the only reason he had to wait is because there were rumors that he might have taken something, and that's awful.
And one day we're actually going to get to the point where the steroid era is not going to make that much of a difference, and those players are going to probably start getting elected. Which is really what we've come to the conclusion as we really wish Miguel Cabrera would have taken PEDs. The numbers he would have put up.
940.
Oh, my gosh.
He would have been 940 by now.
Cabrera has almost 1,600 RBI at this point.
What would have happened if... Seriously now, what would have happened if Frank Thomas had done steroids?
Yeah. Well, he would have killed somebody.
Well,
and been
that's
kicked
true.
out.
Or Jim Tomei, a guy who, we talk about every once in a while, but, talk about a guy who would have had just insane numbers.
Yeah. Yeah, but the drawback to Tomei is he's really a nice guy. And,
and nobody cares.
That's why he needs to be A-Rod, right? He's a total jerk, and hey, look, he gets on the news. Tomei, it's like 600 home runs and whatever. So the standings currently are the Blue Jays, and of course this is Friday evening. When you're listening to this on Saturday morning, they may totally have changed, but the Blue Jays and Red Sox currently are tied for first. The Orioles are a game back. The Yankees are only 5.5 back. Surprisingly, the Rays are 16.5. So the Indians lead their division by 4.5 over the Tigers, hanging in there. And then the Royals 6.5, who seem to be, they're 9-1 in their last 10. What a up and down season they've had.
Insane, isn't it?
Great runs, and then horrible. The White Sox and Twins are far back. The Rangers lead the Mariners by 7.5. Mariners not played well over their last 3. They've lost 3 straight when they were actually on a roll. The Astros are 8.5 back, looking like the Mariners and Astros are dropping further and further from the wild card spot. And then the Nationals lead the Marlins by 8 games, and the Ted's Mets by 10. It just goes to show you, everybody was talking last year before the season about the Nationals. Oh, they're in the playoffs, and they don't make the playoffs. And then the Mets, oh man, they're World Series and probably not going to make the playoffs. Right. And the Cubs lead their division by 856 games.
That's accurate.
Yeah, and the Dodgers lead the Giants currently by 2, which is kind of a surprise.
Kind of a surprise.
Well,
seriously, with the injuries they've had, and Kershaw's
right.
out, and they have a lead. That's amazing.
Well, I don't want to talk about it any longer. We're talking about jinxing it, so let's change the
Jinx.
So, as far as the wild card teams, the Blue Jays and the Red Sox are somehow in the wild card, even though they're tied. I guess because they're tied,
right.
The AL East. They lead the wild card by a game. And then the Tigers are 2 back, the Mariners are 3 back, and the Royals and Astros 4 back. Then the Yankees 4.5 back. But you have to start climbing teams at that point. It makes it really difficult. And then the Giants, 1.5 games up in the National League. The Cardinals currently would make the playoffs. Marlins,
of course,
isn't that crazy?
Of course they do. No one's said a word about the Cardinals all season long, and they'll probably be in the playoffs again because, again, as we have said, it is in the National League bylaws.
And then the Marlins are 1.5 games back of the wild card spot, and the Pirates 2.5, the Mets 3.5, and then the Rockies are 7.5, so they're out of it. So basically, they're out of it. So yeah, it's the Cardinals. It'll be interesting. The wild card is always fun.
Yes.
We have a whole month to go. So, Todd, any final words?
Jose Altuve is a hell of a player.
He is a hell of a player. He should be. Especially if the Astros make the playoffs, he probably should be the American League MVP.
Our listeners, go to MLB.com. There's an article, How Altuve Became an Elite Slugger by Mike Petriello. It is
by Joe Morgan. Super
in-depth, and this is the kind of analytics that baseball people don't like, but it's amazing, the breakdown on the stats they have. It's here's a stat. This is hilarious. Here's a stat. The zone of the angle, the exit angle from his bat. Balls that leave his bat at an angle between 10 and 30 degrees and are over 100 miles an hour off his bat. That's a stat. Seriously. But the explanation is this is why he's doing so well, why he's just destroying it, because 11.3% of all balls he hits are coming off at that angle and that speed.
Crazy.
He is hitting 844 on those balls. When he's just, a more basic stat, when he's ahead of the count, he's hitting 458, 586, 764. That's his slash line, which of course you're going to do better when you're ahead of the count. Major league average is 302, 472, 526. Nothing like what Altuve is doing. And I have to remind our listeners, he's 3'2". So it's incredible what this guy is doing. He's probably on jungle juice or something like that.
He's Joe Morgan's son.
He's Joe Morgan's son. I mean, seriously, doesn't he not remind you a lot about Joe Morgan?
He reminds me of Joe
Morgan. Joe Morgan, one of my favorite players ever, plus the fact that he's really, really smart, and I like listening to Joe Morgan when he's on. So that is my final word. God, that was a long word.
Well, thanks for listening. Thanks for Big Mike. Thanks to Big Mike. Wow, I can't speak English. This is a great way to end the show. Thanks to Big Mike for being on. And again, this is Friday night. Who knows what happened on Friday night? Hopefully we didn't miss anything too big.
We missed Ted.
Well,
The fans hoping to catch a little bit of the old-time religion right here, baby. With Junior stepping up to the plate. Here comes the stretch. And the pitch to Junior on the way. Swing and a fly ball hit to deep right center field. That baby is going to be fly away. The old-time religion lives. Junior does it. A 2